you're picturing it and what it's talking about. I'm the monster. Mom, I just found out Dippin' Dots is a florist spaghetti pictures.
Yeah, this is totally gonna live up to the hype. Hey, hello, how do you do? Shady Doorags here. So, Big Mouth. What can I say about it that hasn't already been said? This show has been talked about by big names like I Hate Everything, The Mysterious Mr. Ender, and Just a Robot, the latter of whom named me specifically.
Big Mouth is not a great show. It's not even a good show. But I would say it's an alright show. I certainly enjoyed it a lot more than F is for Family. And I would love to see Shady Doorags analyze this show. I know he said he wouldn't, but I hope he changes his mind.
For those of you who don't speak robot, let me translate that.
I will start a robot uprising unless Shady Doorags talks about this show.
Not to mention there was that little poll idea where everyone asked me to take a look at this show. Pretty sure most of you just wanted to see me suffer, but my hands are tied. Big Mouth is an adult animation show about kids going through puberty. There's Nick, the kid who hasn't started puberty yet.
When are you gonna ravage me with puberty?
This again. You're just not ready.
Andrew, the kid who's farther along puberty than he wants to be.
Missy, I can't be your friend and just pretend I don't love you.
And Jessie, the girl who starts puberty mid-season.
Jay is so gross. He doesn't know what I want.
Yeah, he doesn't. Jessie, what do you want?
I don't know.
They're surrounded by other characters who are either also going through puberty or their own life problems that are supposed to be just as conflicting. Along the way, they come across surreal characters and situations that either make the events more interesting or confusing.
Allow me to introduce you to famous deceased homosexuals, Socrates, Freddie Mercury, and Justice Antonin Scalia.
So I'll admit, I had a difficult time deciding what topic I should tackle for this show. Some people wanted me to rip the show a new one because of how bad it is. I'm not going to do that though. Don't get me wrong, I do hate the show, but that's more from personal taste. I was never gonna like this show, even if it had Avatar The Last Airbender levels of writing. But it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. In fact, there are some things I like about it, like Missy and the Hormone monstrous.
This boy's a tall, lumpy, dumpy drink of water, and we are thirsty.
Well, my mouth is dry.
Other people wanted me to analyze this show and expose it as the misunderstood gem that it actually is. No, I'm not gonna do that either. It's not the worst show in the world, but there's no way I'd call it good. For example, one of the major issues is that pretty much everything is explained to the audience. Having an entire song and dance where the theme of the show is explained pretty much defeats the point of the show. If everything is explained after it's presented, there's practically no point in analyzing it. So, what am I going to talk about? Well, the thing that interested me most was the most interesting thing about the show. The Hormone monster. I found that many people complain about this character. Not that he's a horrible idea or anything, but he's an inconsistent one. You can't really figure out how the rules to him work. The show starts with only Andrew being able to see him, which makes sense since Andrew is the only one in puberty. In the first episode, Andrew says the monster isn't real and is just a representation of his desires.
You are not real. You're just some hormone monster my brain created.
However, before the end of the episode, Nick winds up seeing him too.
Hello?
Oh, good evening.
Who are you?
Don't worry about it. I'm just here to give your friend a nocturnal emission.
Okay, so the monster is real, because if he was just Andrew's mental creation, there's no way Nick would be able to see him. But if he's real, then why can Nick only sometimes see him and sometimes not? Sometimes he'll have a conversation with Andrew while insulting Nick, despite Nick standing right next to Andrew. But then it's discovered that there's more than one hormone monster, and certain people get assigned certain ones. But only certain people act like they exist, and the hormone monster was created from an alien doing things to the Earth. But if that's the case, how did at least 2 more get created? Did the alien come back and do that exact same thing 2 more times? And how can the hormone monster punch a hole in the wall, which can be seen by the cops, but the cops don't believe he did it, despite that practically everyone goes through puberty, and thus the cops must know the hormone monsters are real? Nothing adds up. In his video on Big Mouth, Just a Robot suggested we look the other way when it came to the hormone monster.
A common complaint I hear about this show is it sets up rules, but it doesn't really follow through with them. Like the kids have these things called puberty fairies. Oh, I'm sorry, hormone monsters. And while I will admit that this is a problem, Brian Griffin is a talking dog in a world that doesn't have very many talking dogs, and he's treated as normal. And don't even get me started on the whole "can the parents hear the baby talk" thing from Family Guy. We look the other way for Family Guy, we can do the same for Big Mouth.
And that got me thinking, why don't we look the other way for him? Should we? He might be one of the worst things about Big Mouth, but he's also one of the best. I gave it some thought, and the conclusion I've come to is no. We shouldn't look past the problems of the hormone monster. In fact, we should better understand them because they are the key factor to Big Mouth as a show. The hormone monster is the most distinguishing feature of Big Mouth concept-wise. It's what separates this show from everything else. A show about kids growing up and going through puberty could mean a ton of shows. Throw in a couple of elements like ghosts, and again, that could still be a lot of shows. A show with monsters that represents hormones is a much more unique concept. Thus, the hormone monster is the most important trait to keep people believing that this world exists on its own. If the rules to the hormone monster are not stable, then this world is not stable. The point of fiction is to pull a person out of the real world and into the fictional one. The hormone monster having no rules makes Big Mouth break immersion. If there was anything that could get away with being inconsistent, it wasn't the hormone monster. But even if you don't care about immersion, there's another reason why the hormone monster is so important. Many people who watch Big Mouth watch it for more than just entertainment purposes. It gives them a topic to think on that might be uncomfortable to talk about in day-to-day conversations. Some people take this show seriously and want others to take it just as seriously. The hormone monster was the closest thing the show had to being deep. Like Lucy from Disenchantment, if done properly, it could have dealt with many topics on a metaphorical level. But because nothing is firmly established, it's very clear that the writers just thought it was an interesting idea and went with it. The hormone monster's inconsistency makes it that much more difficult for anyone to take the show seriously, as it's the easiest thing to point to as proof that the show's creators really didn't care about deep storytelling. All in all, the hormone monster is a good example to how not to handle absurd concepts in world building. He was the key from turning Big Mouth from just another adult show to one with significant meaning and top tier storytelling. Because the rules to him don't line up, the show is in a much more noticeably worse state than it could have been. There, I talked about Big Mouth. I said I was going to do it, and now I have, which makes me not a liar, and I never have to do it again. Now to move on. Do you guys think you could recommend something more up my level? Maybe something a little nicer?
Perf!
Yeah, that's more like it. A nice little red panda show. Let's give this a watch. This has been Shady Doorags. So long. Farewell. Avita said. Goodbye.